Hello everyone, today we are taking a look at the EVO 3.5 from AvionRC, and if that name does not ring a bell, they operated under the name Avant Quads previously, and if that name does ring a bell, it's probably because you've seen one of my other review videos. Something else to know is that I have a strong bias towards their quads. I like how they perform, I like how they're built, I like the reliability. I've purchased some of the quads, maybe I had a Vista unit and I wanted to get an analog unit or vice versa. And when it comes to the comments on these videos, I always ask for people for feedback. So if you have one of these, please let me know, whether it's this version or something else. I really want to know about your experience in acquiring the quad and flying the quad and what your thoughts are. Because the reports that I have back are overwhelmingly positive. I think the most serious negative report I have back is of a broken arm, which does stink. Anytime you break anything in FPV or RC in general, we're always kind of saddened a bit by it, but broken arm's kind of normal, depending upon the crash. You know, it might have been a soft crash and been very disappointing. I can understand that. Something else you should know about AvionRC is they have a coupon code for me, and I'll put that down in the video description. That is good for any quad on their website. So you don't have to buy this particular EVO 3.5 or this particular version. Any quad, that code down in the video description will get you 5% off. Another thing is they ship DHL, which for me here in the central Midwest US, that is the most reliable and fastest shipping. Usually takes about 3 days to get to me in total, it seems like, from time that DHL gets it to the time that it's dropped off on my porch. Might not be the same for you, but something to keep in mind. That shipping is calculated into the price, I believe. I think it's included all the time as free DHL shipping, so we know we pay for that shipping somewhere, right? And that shipping does come out of China. So depending upon where you're at in the world, that's something else to note. So again, I've got that coupon code down in the video description if you would like to try out a AvionRC quad. Unfortunately, you can't go to Avant Quads and get one of those quads anymore. The purchase option just doesn't work. So go to avionrc.com. I'll link it down in the video description. But keep in mind, all the way through this video, that I have a bias towards them.
Oh, shoot.
Of course, in my particular version, I have got the DJI O3 air unit and camera. You can see the air unit right here at the back and the camera right up front. The receiver in my particular case is Express LRS, and it's zip tied right there to that print. That is a Beta FPV receiver, and you can see the T-style antenna mounted to the other print right there. We've got Brother Hobby 1504.5 3950 kV motors, and the props are the Jim Fan 2530 tri-bladed props. They're of course 3.5 inches. Note, they do have an insert. The all-in-one flight controller is the JHEMCU GF420 all-in-one. That is a 40 amp ESC on that, and it is 2 to 6S compatible. In this particular case, we're running 4S. We do have the single DJI antenna out back and an XT30 for a battery connection. Battery straps still say Avant Quads on them. And the battery mat is not texturized, but it's a sticky, rubberized, hardened rubbered surface. This little cut right here, that helps the battery strap when it's attached to the battery keep from sliding back and forth. We've got my favorite tape over here on the arms holding the motor wires down. We've also got 2 zip ties. One is holding the DJI wiring down. The other one is holding our battery lead down. See, they build them like I talk about. Frame design uses a sandwich plate. These are our through bolts that go all the way through the standoffs. If we remove that bolt and loosen that bolt, we should be able to pull the arm out to replace it. TPU print holding our camera, as well as a front lip bumper guard. TPU print with a zip tie securing the antenna in the rear. Of course, with this design, our USB port for the O3 that we will have to activate is easily accessible, as well as the USB port for our all-in-one flight controller and beta flight configuration. They use 3 motor mounting points, as well as a horn of carbon fiber off the end for a little bit of motor protection. And it weighs, without a battery, 173.6 grams. In the flight that I'm going to show you, I flew this flower printed 650 milliamp GNB 4S battery, which does get us under 250 grams at 243 grams. On average, I get 3 minutes and 45 seconds up to 4 minutes and 5 seconds with the 650. With an 850, you can get about a minute and a half to up to 2 minutes of more flight time in the flight style that I'm about to show you. But with the 850, you're over 250 grams, and it comes in at 260 grams. Even though I didn't fly it, if you want to split the capacity difference, or kind of split it, you can try this red labeled G&B 720 milliamp forest battery, which brings the weight to 242.84 grams. So there's more capacity in this battery and more weight in this battery. Carbon fiber arms with my calipers measure 3 3/4 millimeters. Bottom plate 1.5 millimeters. Top plate 2 millimeters. Bottom sandwich plate is 2 millimeters. And top sandwich plate looks to be 1.5 millimeters too. So motor post to motor post, it's more than my calipers will reach. I estimate it's 165 millimeters motor post to motor post. So AvionRC does not send the quads to me in retail packaging. So as far as what's included, make sure you look at the website and the packing list, or features as they call it. But in my particular case, I got an extra set of props. I got a little air unit manual, and well as one zip tie. I think the first thing to call out is what a beautiful day it was. Holy catfish. You know, this was actually before I had the Dark Knight from AvionRC. This would have been a great day to fly something like that, you know, small, micro, cine-whoop sort of thing. But boy, this was just a beautiful day, and so I burned all my packs this particular day. This was a weekend, hardly any wind that I could actually feel. Weather data was 74 degrees, a beautiful 74 degrees, I should add. Pretty much sunny skies, as you can see there through that O3 footage. This is of the goggles, of course. And the wind data is 7 miles an hour. So in case you missed it, I want to make it perfectly clear that I have a strong bias towards AvionRC and Avant Quads quads. Same company, just previous names, and I like how they fly, I like how they're built. I generally think that they're reading my mind, or they watched the videos before they ever sent them to me to review or something, because it's got all the things like the zip ties on the wiring that I talk about in my particular videos, the tape on the motor hold the motor wires down to the arms, something else that I talk about. Their soldering is nice and high polished silver. They're using good solder to make good strong solder joints. They always have a certain flight feel to them. Now this one is a little bit big for my space. I would say if you are in the same sort of space like me, sure, you can absolutely do it. If you're relatively new to FPV, it might be a bit more challenging, because this thing has got gobs of power, and you may have noticed my camera angle isn't quite what I usually fly at. That was another thing that I just had to lower, because I thought I'm just going to keep getting out of shape. You know, I've gotten over the years a little bit better at avoiding those crashes, telling when I'm getting off my line and making a correction. But it just happened so frequently at my old camera angle, because this thing is so quick, it's so agile, and with that little 650 milliamp battery and still getting almost 4 minutes of flight time, I could barely get like a minute and a half before I would have my first crash. Which brings me to another point. You're probably listening to those props and going, oh, those props don't sound good. No, I've crashed this thing, as I showed you in that quick hitter one time. I've crashed this thing a few times. That was the only one that was actually into like the wood structure of the house, if you want to call it that, and then coming down on the cement. The rest of them I'd get tangled up in a tree and tumble to the ground or something like that. So the pitch on my props is probably a bit off. Of course, I don't change out the props just because I had a crash for review purposes. I don't think that's a good idea. And as far as testing goes, I think having the props a little bit beat up tells me a little bit about how safe the tune is for, people who are going to fly this time and time again. You're not going to change your props after every crash, so you need to be able to fly the quad. The tune needs to work for the quad when the props are a little bit banged up. That's why professionals like UAV Tech and Bardwell and anybody, Chris Rosser, people doing PID tune tutorials, if they don't, I'm pretty sure they all do, they talk about not tuning with pristine props, or not finalizing your tune with pristine props, because they'll only be pristine for a short time. You're going to be flying props like this that are off pitch and sound a little bit odd for a good portion of your flights. I should also mention that I am not, I don't have an ND filter on this, so everything you see is just straight out of the camera. Well, not technically. This is the camera view through the goggle view so that I can show you the OSD. Of course, you don't have to look at this yourself if you like to review your footage without the Betaflight OSD. That is an option. You can download it straight off the O3 VTX. They also have different versions of this. Let me see here. I think they have several different things as far as receivers go. They have XM Plus for FR Sky. Don't recommend Crossfire. That would be fine for anybody who wants to use it. And if you have the DJI controller, you can use that as well on this quad. They also have options for other sorts of parts as well. You can also get it without the O3 if you've got one you want to add yourself. All right, let's start with my first complaint, and it's partially about the batteries and their short leads. It's a micro battery. This happens to be the 850, but the 650s have relatively short leads too. And this, I want the battery to be relatively centered. Betaflight has reached a maturity level where it can compensate for us if we don't have a perfectly, center of the weight of the quad isn't perfectly balanced. But for my fingers, I can get my battery connected here, obviously, but after it's connected and I fully seat it, I have a hard time getting my fingers in here so that I can disconnect the battery. That's my first complaint, and it's kind of a personal complaint. I also don't like that these battery leads, the balance leads, are so short, so what I tend to do is take a rubber band and pin that balance lead down. I don't want it waving around in the wind, and I don't want it getting in my camera view, so I just use a rubber band on that to pin the balance lead down. I think one shortcoming that I see fairly consistently with the AvionRC and Avant quads is the inability to go much higher in your camera angle. Now, I get what they're trying to do with their print. They give us two options here where actually you can slide it back so you can adjust the camera depth as far as how far it sticks out on the nose. And of course, on all quads that have the DJI O3, kind of relying on camera protection with what DJI built. Not great, but I guess we have to live with it if we're going to fly O3. And then they've also, if I get this kind of to where you can see it, this print will provide some limited protection as well, and then the top will kind of keep the top from banging if you go tumbling through the tree or you go scraping across some cement or something. Maybe you come in like this or you end up upside down sliding along. So I get why we can't get extreme camera angle and this print protect our O3 or our FPV camera really, really well. I think they're trying to get a balance there. Personally, for myself, if I had a bigger space that I could fly this in, because it is a good performer. It is pretty quick. It covers lots of ground. It's 3.5 inches. We're edging towards that 5-inch performance in a relatively small space, my backyard. If it didn't perform so well, I would definitely want more camera angle out of it. So you may find that you want more camera angle, and that in this particular case, you're going to be able to go up another 10, maybe 15 degrees from what I have there, which should get you close to 35, I think. But if you want to go higher than that, you may have to do a little DIY, do some carving there. If you've got 3D print skills and design skills, of course, you can redesign this print to suit your nature, whether it's to mount the camera a little farther up and then maybe less of a, should we call this a topper or a hood or something, so you can get the camera way up there. I want to give you a closer look at how their soldering is done. See how shiny those solder balls are on everything there. Very shiny. Always look for that. We've got gummies in our flight controller. We've got metal nuts that mount the flight controller to see that just above the carbon fiber, hopefully. We've got metal nuts so that this won't be shifting around. Those screws will be, really locked down. Their prints are always pretty good. And there's a capacitor right back there. You probably can't see it. My props are getting in the way. Can I move it there? Yeah. We've got a capacitor right back there. They always make a print, and their capacitor is always held by that print. So that's another thing that we just don't see from other companies. Matter of fact, some companies like Emax will solder on a capacitor, but then they'll just sticky foam tape it down to the all-in-one, which works, but it's not ideal, especially in crashing scenarios where those things are going to get jostled. You can also see where they've routed the wiring in order to pin down that stuff so it's not flopping around. Used a zip tie, as I said, in the quick specs to secure the receiver down to that print. So it has dual purpose. It's essentially a receiver mount as well as a capacitor mount. And then we've got on top of the gummies, we've got nylon nuts there and there. The nylon nuts are a good choice in my opinion, because they won't be likely to, sorry, I had that slightly askew. They won't be likely to vibrate loose. Those nylon nuts aren't as prone to vibration as a metal nut is up there. So you can hunker down the metal nut down here and it probably won't vibrate loose. But that one certainly shouldn't. It would be less likely being that it's nylon than if it were being metal. One of the things I was looking at, and I've got a little tool out here because I wanted to see with this cable for our DJI 03 camera. Yeah, there is some potential as I've kind of dug it out. I really can't get it out towards the prop line. Hopefully I get enough light there. It's still a few millimeters away. Maybe there's potential that could get over into one of our props. I think that potential is relatively low because, like I said, I was pulling on it to get it over here. That's not natural. I guess if you were to tumble through a tree, it might get pulled on, but it wouldn't stay there. And hopefully by that time you're either disarmed or the props are very, very slowly moving at that point. Maybe just the idle because you're at 0 throttle. But there is some limited potential that camera cable could get over here into the props. Maybe, maybe not. I do like the idea that they have mounted the antenna up here. I don't fly at great range though, obviously, so you might feel differently about that. The antenna is not far away from the carbon fiber. Of course, with Express LRS, you can always crank up your milliwatts that you're running and lower your packet rate if you wanted to get range. And I generally fly at 100 milliwatts, even though I probably don't need more than 10 in my little space in the backyard. Express LRS has worked very well for me. The standoffs that they use to support the top plate to keep crashes when you have a battery up top from getting, crushing our electronics are metal, and they are, if you can't tell, they're a little bit texturized there. So if you were need to grab a hold of those in order to undo the screws, you should be able to do that. They shouldn't be too slick. Of course, if you use a tool, they might get slightly marred up. Give you a longer look at this bottom plate. We already kind of talked about it in the quick specs, but I wanted to take a moment here to show this to you as well. There's not really much for me to talk about that we haven't covered already. You might want to just look at the mounting that they have available on the frame if you would like to build one yourself. And this is a frame that catches your eye. So we've got some different mount points. We've got 20 by 20 here, and it looks like 20 by 20 back here, as well as the DJI. So if you wanted to do Vista, that can be done. Or if you wanted to do the new HD0 Freestyle that's very square, that could be mounted here in the rear, and as well as a 20 by 20 all-in-one flight controller or a flight stack if you wanted to go with a flight stack, a dual board, and run analog. You could do that as well. I think one of the shortcomings with this, as we're looking here at the bottom, is that there is no protection for our screw heads. So as if you go sliding across a parking lot, concrete, asphalt, what have you, it is going to scrape here. Of course, it will scrape this down, and that will wear down slowly. I'm not a fan of putting those foam pads out on the arms. I don't like that. I don't think it's reliable, and I think they're going to tear off maybe the second time you come sliding in across concrete or asphalt. Versus, these are going to wear down slowly over time. Matter of fact, I think these are going to wear a little bit more. So if you do have something like this or this one, look at your screws every now and again and take a hex driver and get it in there and make sure that it seats real well. And you might need to change out the screw heads a little bit every once in a while. And by once in a while, it's going to vary. Do you like to come sliding in on your landing? Maybe it's something fun that you do. Or do you like to, I think it was Mr. Steele for a while was spending lots of time in his videos sliding down handrails like a skateboarder with his quad. That has all potential for wearing that stuff down. They are exposed. They're not protected. We don't have anything to keep the quad up off of there. And I suppose if you had pads out here, you could put your own pads on. One of the things that I looked at years ago was the little bumpers that you put on the inside doors of your kitchen cabinets or cabinets. They're just little circles. You could stick those on there. I don't know if they're quite tall enough to protect those screw heads or not, because this plate, of course, is further down than the arms are. So if you put them out here, they might not do the trick, but you could mount two here and mount two here, and that would then keep you from sliding on your screw heads, and that's probably a 25-cent fix. Something like that. So that is the EVO 3.5 from AvionRC, previously known as Avant Quads. I don't have a lot of complaints about it, but I wanted to give you a good long look at it. That's why I kind of droned on when I was showing you different aspects that we'd kind of already covered so that you could really peer into the inside and take a long gaze. Of course, the pause button on the video might come in handy if you want to do your own diagnosis. But I also don't want you to forget, if you are interested in these, whether it's this quad or anything else they offer over at AvionRC, I've got a coupon code down in the video description. They ship DHL out of China. And if you own one, whether you've had a good experience or a not so good experience or a bad experience, I need to know, please. please let me know. It's important. You know, I can still have a bias towards their quads because I like them, but it will temper me as far as credible reports. So if you can tell me if you had a crash and something then happened, tell me about the crash, please. You know, what surface did you crash into? Was it the first crash? Was it a lot of crashes after the first crash? Kind of need some information about the crash because I crash them too. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise about AvionRC or the EVO 3.5, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.